YouTube. So just a heads up about that, or extra fun, however you view that. I'm going to tell you just ahead of time, you guys are all much more used to doing this than I am. I have watched or participated in a number of services and meetings and what have you over the last year and a half, but this is my first time leading a Shabbat service on Zoom. So my parents have given me lots of practice leading their minyan for family yard site. So I've done that, but a little less complicated. Anyway, it is a pleasure to be here with all of you. I want to see who else is here, just so I can see your faces or your black squares with your names. Great. So it's very sweet. I love that it said in the slides, Shabbat in our homes or from our homes. It's a strange thing, but a wonderful thing that we can be connected this way. So I asked Rabbi Carey, it'd probably be a text, it's hard to remember how I communicate, right? I said, it sounded so beautiful. How did that were people singing with her? How did that work? Because the timing's always kind of weird, right? On Zoom. And she wrote like in all caps, that's her wife. So I was very impressed to hear wonderful to hear the beautiful harmonies. Mine is in another room juggling children, so I think the sound will be more beautiful if you provide the harmonies. So with that, we begin with Hine Ma Tov, how good it is and how pleasant to be sitting here. Hopefully you're in a cozy place in your home, relaxed, having had a nice dinner or about to have a dinner. Perhaps you have a glass of wine or our family's new favorite drink, a watermelon fizz. Amy, I saw you looking impressed. It comes in a can from Trader Joe's. So I just gave it a fun name so my daughter would drink it. Hine ma tovu manayim Shabbat achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim Shabbat achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov Shabbat achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov Shabbat achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov manayim Shabbat achim gam yachad. A bit of exhaling the week, the rush to do whatever the things are in your week, the rush to make it, to be sitting in front of a screen, which I say in the good way, so that we can be here together. We welcome Shabbat in so many ways, by singing, by exhaling the busyness of the week with our words of prayer and reflection, and with candlelight. So I'm going to bring, I don't know if you'll be able to see them. The candles are, they're just at the bottom of the screen. There they are. Invite you to welcome in that Neshama Yetera, that additional soul that accompanies us each Shabbat. Don't worry, it is. It probably looks closer than it is. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. I've had those candlesticks. They're not my grandmother's or my great-grandmother's, but they were the first nice piece of Judaica that I ever had. And they were a gift. So it's always nice to begin Shabbat that way. And we continue with the blessing over the wine or the grape juice. If you are drinking another fruit of the vine, something else, watermelon fizz. Right, it's a fruit and it does grow on a vine. Never considered that. So if you have watermelon fizz, it's a cup of grape juice, which you can't see, but one of my children for a number of years loved the Kiddush wine. She would always love when we said the blessing and she got a little teeny bit of Manischewitz. She loved it, and I didn't know whether to be pleased or concerned until one night, I don't know, many years into it, where we didn't have any Manischewitz, which I love for Shabbat. And we had grape juice, and she's like, "Oh, this is really good." And I realized that I had been denying my child grape juice for a number of years. So whatever gives you pleasure, because the Kiddush, in the traditional form of the Kiddush, we recall creation and we recall that the freedom and that this is our first, that Shabbat is first above everything. But mostly, or above all, Kiddush is about joy. So I invite you to call to mind something that brings you joy, whether it's in your room, whether it's a person, whether it's a thing, an experience, whatever it is, to call to mind that joy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav. I just said the wrong blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam morei peri hagafen. L'chaim. And I always tell bar bat mitzvah students, don't worry that you're going to mess up. I will always mess up first. So with that, we continue the words of Lecha Dodi. And these words were written by Shlomo Alkabetz a very long time ago. And the story of this song that we sing to welcome Shabbat is that he and his students, his companions, would go out into the hills of Tzfat to welcome Shabbat just as the sun was setting. And they would welcome the Sabbath bride, the Sabbath queen, Sabbath rest. So I invite you to welcome Shabbat. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabala. 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 Shamor zachor b'dibur echad, yishmi'anu El Ham Yechad, Adonai Echad, Shemo Echad, L'Shemo Tiferet V'Letchila, L'Echad Odini Mikra and Shabbat Mikra L'Echad Odini Mikra and Shabbat Mikra Likrat Shabbat Lechunecha Ki Mekor HaBaracha Mirosh Mikedem Nesocha Tov Maaseh V'Machshava Tfilah L'Echad Odini Mikra Kala and Shabbat Mikra L'Echad Odini Kala and Shabbat Mikra Hit'orri, Ki ba'orech uri, shedaberi, Kevod Adonai alayich nigla. L'Echad Odini Mikra Kala, and Shabbat Mikra L'Echad Odini Mikra Kala, and Shabbat Mikra Bo'ui v'shalom ateret bala, kam b'sima u'tzola, toch emuneh am segula, bo'ui chala, bo'ui kala, L'Echad Odini Kala, and Shabbat Mikra L'Echad Odini Kala, and Shabbat Mikra. Candlelight and joy and singing and envisioning. I hope you've breathed Shabbat into you a bit at this point. We continue our service with the Baruch Hu, the call to traditionally called the call to prayer. And what I love about this, it's this version that I know is sort of the familiar Shir Tikvah version of Baruch Hu, is that it's not only calling us together to one another, but I invite you to sing loudly enough, and it doesn't matter whether you're an on-tune singer or an off-tune singer, that you feel your voice, that you can feel your voice when you sing those words. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. So we're calling one another together for prayer, and we're also calling ourselves to really to be here. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shechina Holine. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. We'll do it a few times so you can feel your voice. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. All of our souls, our presence here is wonderful. We continue now with the words of the Shema, these words that, if you remember using a print siddur, the words of the Shema in Mishkan Tefillah cross over the middle, I'm not a publisher, the seam of the book. And I love that because it reminds me that the words are woven together across that seam the way we are woven together in spirit and in space, that we are the spine. Thank you, Libras. I knew there was a regular word. Yes, just as they cross ours. So these words remind us that there is just one holiness, and it is simply up to us to pay attention to Shema. Pay attention. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And we continue now, connected to one another through calling and voice and vibration and holiness. The words of the Ve'ahavta that say that love, I just thought of the most cliche thing, that love is a verb, right? That's what this means, that we aren't commanded to feel something, but we are commanded to be loving. So together, the words of the Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shimantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, לחיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. We are to be loving. We continue with Micha Mocha. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about being in the desert because that's where our Torah portion has us this week and much of the time, which I think is always good. There's a part of us that's always in the wilderness. And so when these words come to us. We are approaching the sea, right? We have left slavery or the place of slavery, and we're being chased. But we know that we are connected. You and I, know that we are now connected, right? We're being chased, but all is not lost. I think life often feels like there's something chasing us, a project or something on a to-do list, right? Of course, leaders, yes. But in that moment is Nachshon, who we often say he was the one who first stepped into the water. And I was reading something, I don't know, not long ago, that talked about Nachshon as a combination of hope and action, which is a little bit related to what I'm going to talk about a little later. But I love that. It's not just action, it's part trust or faith or, I don't know, maybe you like to swim. But Nachshon is hope and action. So I invite you to think of something, if there's something in your life that needs some sort of a solution, a little bit of a tangle, if you can use this moment to let it bring you to your sense of hope and action, those two things combined. Nehemdar b'kodesh, Torah tehillah, oh sepehlah, oh sepehlah. Find that strength you have for hope and action. Focus on the hope part for today, for Shabbat. He is Amidah, Emily Mathis. Be Amidah, Nehemdar b'kodesh, Torah tehillah, oh sepehlah, oh sepehlah. There are always wonders that are possible, that are within us, and that are around us. We carry that hope into our prayer for the evening, Hashkivenu. And this is a prayer which we ask for protection. And the traditional words evoke, they say, spread over us your sukkah of peace, the sukkah of your peace, right? This protecting presence, very Shekhinah-like. And what I love about this version of Hashkivenu is, again, it's how much we need each other. I don't know whether these connectedness versions have always been yours, or they've come to be more during the Zoom era. But focusing on our connections to one another and our own presence, I think it's been a lonely year for many of us and challenging, right? So finding your voice and connection, knowing that someone is hearing your voice, is so important. Let there be love. Hang on.
Emily, you're muted. Emily, you're muted.
I'm back. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter of life's home. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter of life's home. Ashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Ashkivenu, Shalom. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Ashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Ashkivenu, Shalom. Protection for one another, for what might we feel, pressures, just letting them go, having a blanket. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit, to rise as you are able. For the words of the Amidah, I'm going to stay seated, or I'm likely to knock something over. So we begin with these words of inviting holiness, God, to open our lips. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanura El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Kornei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot ומביא גאולה לפני בניכם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. Return to that strength and kedusha together, using our strength for holiness. אתה גיבור לעם אדוני, מחיי כל חי אתה רב להושיע. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי כל חי ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים. ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מכמוך בגבורות, ומיתו מעליו, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצניח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. I invite you now to take a few moments for your own reflections and words of personal prayer. We'll come together. Mishabach. I saw that someone said that there's a picture of their neighbor, and the next comment was asking about the cardinal. So just as it is joyful and connecting to be able to gather together in person or in Zoom, we also take a moment in our service to call to mind those in our community, those in our circles who could use a bit of healing. And I think this, as we offer this prayer, the words Mishabach, it's both a calling for healing and comfort to those who are beloved to us, and also I think we sing these words, and as I mentioned earlier, we feel our voices calling us to be a bit of blessing in their lives, whether that means making a phone call or paying a visit or giving someone a ride to an appointment or bringing a meal. That we too are a part of being a blessing. So in the Shir Tikvah community, we offer a prayer of healing for Mark Fleckenstein, Dave Cohen, Sona Starr, Rick Goldberg, Peter Ferraresso, Arlene Norris, Carol Robin and Maya Pollock, Paul Coulard, Jeff Wisnia, Dave Hatfield, Ruth Rubin, Jonathan Sharon, Paula Goldstein, Rabbi Rim, Deb Midman, Neil Daniels Midman, Nate Simon, Susan Trendle, Alice Klein, Pat Laser, Amanda Hill, Carrie Labine, Harriet Levy, Ann Pillow, Judy Donaldson, Colleen Barry, Michael Slonim, Andy A., Alan and Joanne Travis, Fiona Sutton, Ayana Masla, Nelson Lovins, Norman and Fran Wexler, Sue Boardman, Angela Penzone, Linda and Fred Lukasik, Nancy Alpert, Ed Snow, Debbie Gilman, Abraham and Co. Lyon, Patty Shepard, Jennifer Chase, Ellen Lee, Jeff Bray, Vicki Oman, Ken Blumberg, Jimmy Krasnow, Asher Guy Ben Chava Veher Shmuel, Claude Lieber, Nancy Lazaro Lieber, Kathy Nath, Mason Lee, Eileen Kleinkopf, and Rabbi Niginsky. So I invite you to call into your hearts, those in your own lives, those in our community, those in your family who could use an extra bit of healing. And I'm really sorry, Don, but I'm doing a different Mi Sheberach. And this is not Don's fault. I just really wanted to do this other one. So I invite you to just take this in. If you're familiar with it, sing along. If you're not, take it in as a healing, a prayer of healing for yourselves. Mi Sheberach Avoteinu, Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov. Mi Sheberach Avoteinu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, veRachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us all as well. For healing and strength. So wonderful. It's the high holiday one. We conclude not our service, but our personal prayers and our community prayers with Oseh Shalom. May the one who makes peace on high also make peace for us and for all the world. Opportunity to exhale. I'm thinking a lot about breathing tonight. I don't know why. I mean, it's not without justification. Oseh Shalom, Shalom Bimromav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'kol Yisrael Ve'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Shalom Bimromav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. Yaseh Shalom aleinu ve'kol Yisrael, amen. Oseh Shalom, Shalom Bimromav, Yaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. Ve'kol Yisrael, So this is where one would say you can close your siddur for a few minutes. I want to offer a few words of Torah for us this evening. So we are, as I mentioned, we are in the desert. We are often in the desert. We're often in the wilderness. And so we're in the book of Numbers, in Bamidbar. And this week we read traditionally a double parsha, both of which refer to multiples of things, matot, maseh, tribes and travels or encampments. So I need to hold on to that idea for a moment, because there's a lot in this double portion of Torah, a lot of big topics, not sort of big events, but big topics. There's how one can annul vows and sort of the legal structure of that. There's war and dividing the spoils of winning. As we anticipate entering the land that we've been traveling to, there's a conflict for Moses anyway, over several tribes who wish to settle outside the land, right, to the east of the land of Canaan. And there is this interesting piece, this creation of cities of refuge for, I think every translation I ever have seen says for inadvertent murderers. We have a different name for that now, but there's these creation of these cities of refuge, right? So there's the marriage, in addition, finally, of the daughters of Tzlofchad, the daughters who insisted on inheritance, right? Because there were no sons in the family. So there's these big topics, significant happenings, and then sort of nestled, like right in the middle, is this enumeration of the 42 places where the Israelites stopped along the way over the course of 40 years from slavery toward the eventual entering into the land where we would at last, sort of long last, right, set down roots and create a home. So, of course, both of those two things, slavery and home, are far more evocative than the endless campsites or the motels on the road, right? These way stations. So, placed right in the middle between all these other big topics, the question is like, why bother? Why is this enumeration here? Certainly we know that Torah is not primarily an archaeological document. It's not a census, and it's definitely, as we know here, definitely not a roadmap, right? Torah is a meaning document. So the question we ask is, what is the meaning here? Why is this here? And as I read it, I think about good storytelling. When you want to capture someone's attention, you need a good hook, right? You need something at the beginning. So you don't start telling someone that you just won the lottery by saying, so this morning I had my coffee, I read the news, I got dressed, I went to work, stopped at the store, right? You start with the hook, because by the time you're at the store, nobody's listening. The hook might be, I thought today would be like any other day, but it wasn't. Or perhaps I've decided to quit my job, right? Something unusual that prompts the listener's interest. Why would you quit your job? Right? So we need a hook. So here what we have is simply this. This is the translation. There's a phrase at the beginning of this Torah reading that says, Moses recorded the starting points of their various marches as directed by God. Doesn't sound super hooky, right? The common understanding is that the marches, these are the marches that were directed by God, which makes sense, right? Moses is recording them. But Nachmanides says it's Moses's writing. It's his recording of the marches that's directed by God. Now, Moses is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He probably knows how to write things down. Why would that be directed by God? That's true. The directed by God part is pretty hooky. But we have a sense, we living now, many centuries later, are aware of why we had to take this long way around, right? That God said we really weren't ready, right? Anyway, so if God here is sort of Moses's publisher or agent, right? If that's the hook, then the question is, why is that important? Why is that the hook, that God directed Moses to write this in a certain way? So we need to we're sort of like reverse engineering or taking it apart and trying to figure out why is that actually a hook, right? So if God directs Moses to record what reads to us as a somewhat repetitive description of the journey, then there must be something important in the going through of each encampment that's listed, right? There's not a story told about each one. There might be a little detail here and there, but there's not a lot told, right? It really is sort of a list. So there's something about naming the places from which we left or where we begin each leg of a journey, right? That's kind of compelling, leaving something or beginning a journey. And we often remember difficulties along the way, right? remember where you get a flat tire or where something difficult happens, the argument. Right? The miracle is not just in the arrival of getting to the place, but in getting through everything on the way. Right? So oftentimes we remember the moments on the way when we felt hopeful, and very often we also remember moments of emotional pain. So we remember those more sometimes than the eventual goals. Many years ago, I studied abroad for a semester, and to this day, I can recall the first introductions that we made to one another when we were all hopeful and curious about the experiences that we were just about to begin. I don't remember what happened the rest of the day. I have a general sense of the experience, but I remember that introduction circle. I remember the day that I was waiting in a cafe to meet the person I eventually married, who's in the other room juggling children. I remember that a little more than the conversation itself. I remember that the day that I graduated from college, it was chilly, but I was intent on wearing a sundress because you had to dress up for graduation. I was the only one. Everyone else wore jeans. But I remember being cold in my sundress, standing in a line, waiting. I don't remember the graduating itself. I remember moments of being at the depths of despair, a painful breakup or a loss, a cancer diagnosis. Think about it. Think about times in your life just before the thing, just before you reached a goal or lived through something difficult. What happens along the way, right? What gets us through the struggle and what leads to the joy? Those are not only part of the story, but often those are the sustenance. Those become such a part of who we are. So I think about the saying that God is in the details, is often taken to suggest, rightly so, that that's how you get the big things, right? You have to pay attention to the details in order to get to the larger goals. But I think there's another message there that we see here in our Torah portion, that it's not even necessarily the big moments that we remember so much as how we got there. So we have to wonder why, right? The big goals in our lives are big goals for a reason. So why do we not remember those so much as the just befores and the just afters, the getting dressed or the parties before and after? Because I think that's what God wants us to do here, to pay attention. That as we traveled through the desert for 40 years, there was, I'm paraphrasing Maimonides a little bit here, he says, there's no farm stand along the way, right? There's no water pump by the side of the highway. It was a miracle. Each step getting through was a miracle. And Maimonides points us out that had we not, or Moses not, recorded this enumeration of all of the places along the way, right? You remember them, not because they're big deals, but because they help us hold the journey. We remember these with the provisions that somehow got us through the struggles, the difficult nights and long days, that we might forget that it was a miracle, the getting through. That miracles are not filled with winning lottery tickets or fairies or golden streets, but rather they are the accompaniment that we have in one another, in the holy spaces between us, and the provisions that get us through the difficult nights and the long days. So as our world begins to open up a bit more and we hear people asking, or I don't know about you, but I certainly have heard people asking, what are you taking with you from this year? Or what did you learn about yourself from this year? Or one friend or a colleague said, what did you accomplish this year that you couldn't have accomplished before the pandemic? And I find myself thinking, I got through. I did also master the 3-week meal plan, but that's a tool, right? That's the sustenance that enables the rest. That's the miracle. Not that you or I or any of us has arrived at our destination, but that we made it through. And each of us is on our own journey with encampments along the way, God willing, on the way to learning and joy and goals reached, but sometimes simply making it through without fear taking over. That is the miracle. That there will be places with water. There will be places that leave us parched. There will be moments of struggle, but there will be moments of respite. And most importantly of all, the accompaniment that we are for one another, to remember with us what has led us to this moment, together to remember who we are becoming. So my wish for each of us this Shabbat is that, just as Joshua and Caleb, who were the only leaders to enter the land after those 40 long years, we can find our patience and our hope. The way to have hope and action that Nachshon had. That when we see an obstacle, we can also envision making our way through. Perhaps to consider what we need and stock up or get started, to see simply the next leg of the journey and continue to take one step forward at a time through each encampment of our own journeys together. Shabbat Shalom. There are people that each of us holds in our heart who have been such a part of our lives in bringing us to this moment, but who are no longer with us. And we remember them with the words of the mourner's Kaddish. So if you are remembering someone today, I invite you to include their names in the chat on the side here. And I'll share those in the community that Shir Tikvah is remembering this week. Christine, those with the yard sites, Christine Patzos, friend of Karen Grossman, Ruth Singer, the mother of Linda Singer-Burke, Eileen Collins, the mother-in-law of Roberta Latsky, and those in their Shloshim, the first 30 days, Roberta Lipperman, Franklin Julian Starr, Lydia Ann Freitas Bernaglia, and in their first year of remembrance, Jim Medford, Jerry Sachs, Shirley Siegel, Jack Langerman, and Gladys Shuker. If there are others you would like us to include, your sister, Louise de Napoli. For all these dear people, we carry with us the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, be'amad divra chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'zman kariv imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, Shmei d'kudsha, b'richu. Le'ela minkor b'yachata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran b'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who dwell on earth. And together we say, Amen. So we conclude our service. Are there ever announcements anymore? There's not announcements, right? You get emails. People are inundated with announcements. So we conclude our service with Shalom Aleichem. Sorry. And what I've been thinking about Shalom Aleichem is that, excuse me, it is a song about, not so much about traveling, but about coming together and offering blessing and then continuing on our way. So I invite you to take a look around this Zoom room, as it were, and to see all those who are here together, that we have come to be a blessing, really, for one another. And that after our service, we will continue on our way. I can't find my music for Shalom Aleichem. Yes, I can. So I'm going to scroll through just to see all of your faces. So thank you for allowing me to step in to this community. I've been with you a couple of times over the last bunch of years, but not for quite some time. So it's nice to be with the Sweet Shir Tikvah community. And I look forward to joining you again in a couple of weeks. So until then, may we each remember that we are companions for one another, that we are Malachei Hasharet, ministering angels to one another. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Yimelech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Malachei Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Yimelech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Malachei Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Yimelech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Say Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Yimelech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbat Shalom. May we all be ministering angels and of accompaniment to one another. A sweet Shabbat to you all.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi Mathis.
Well, it's nice to hear your voices.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much for this beautiful service.
Shabbat
Shalom.
Thank you, and Shabbat